Applaudieren für unser wunderbares Podium. I'm going to switch to English right away. We're happy about everyone who found his way to Kreisky Forum, but we have a stellar podium tonight, and you're going to enjoy our discussion very much, I hope. Our topic is Hungary, the elections on the 12th of April, and we want to discuss how we have come this far and how far Orbán might want to go in order to win these elections, which isn't sure he will. Is he doomed, or will he rise like an eagle from the ashes of, of what he did to Hungary? How much has Hungary changed? We want to talk about that, and what is its possible future. So the center of our discussion is the elections, and let me introduce my two guests on the podium. I'll start on the right, which is impolite, sorry, Zoltán Ádám. He was born in 1971 in, and I cannot say that town. Can you please do it?
Balassagyarmat.
You will now understand why I can.
It's not that hard. Balassagyarmat.
Okay, should we repeat it all together? He's a political economist with broad knowledge in all political sciences and social sciences, and has various degrees from CEU, from ELTE, which is the biggest Hungarian university, from Harvard, I think, from the Uni of Debrecen. He used to work at Corvinus Uni, but had to leave. We'll talk about that later. Okay. He spent some of his time at Wissenschaftskolleg in Berlin doing research about academic freedom in Hungary. We'll talk about that too. And is an expert on democracies turning into autocracies, which is part of our topic tonight. He now works at ELTE at the Center for Social Sciences. Okay, right to my next is Zsófia Bán, who was born in Brazil as a daughter of Jewish emigres and came back to Hungary in 1969.
Not exactly, not emigres, actually. My father was sent officially. Okay. He was in foreign trade.
Okay, I didn't find that because, so I figured they were refugees, I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that sometimes figures on Wikipedia pages.
Exactly.
But yeah.
She studied literature and languages, taught at ELTE as well for 35 years, first at the English department, then American Studies, Literature and Visual Studies. She lived in the US, in Switzerland, and in Germany. Now teaches at the University of Fine Arts and successfully writes stories, essays, and novels. Your newest one is Aletheia Lives, right?
That's right.
Exactly. Which is printed in German too, and you can buy it. So let's talk about academic freedom before we plunge into the fate of Hungary. You had to leave your job as an associate professor at Corvinus University in 2023 because you told me you refused to examine a student who allegedly failed to meet essential requirements. You would think that's a normal thing. You would not want to test him. Who was he? Who stood behind him? And what happened when you said no?
So when I said no, along with my colleagues, actually, I was not the only professor in that subject, in that class, but I happened to be the most senior of the professors in that class, and we refused to examine the student, and the student's family got active, and they started to put pressure on the university management. And the university management decided to, at the end of the day, to examine the student themselves. So one of the deans personally examined the student, and this happened with the knowledge of the rector and of another dean. I filed a petition before the ethical committee of the university. The ethical committee said it was unethical, but then the rector and the deans appealed, and in the second instance, the university leadership basically themselves acquitted the rector and the deans, and they started a new procedure, at the end of which I was kicked out.
So he wasn't kicked out, you were kicked out, but what you did not lift the secret, who was the guy? And who was his family?
Yeah, I mean, the guy is a member of the Raimkulov family. Actually, I was not the one who made that name publicly available. The press revealed in Hungary, and this is a very influential, very rich family. And the interesting part of the story in a systemic sense is that the family happened to be a share owner in MOL, which is the Hungarian oil and gas national champion company. And MOL at the same time was in a controlling position of the university themselves. Because universities, and this is the really important part of the story, university governance, I mean public universities governance was transformed in a way in Hungary that allowed for very influential people becoming trustees in so-called public interest trusts who became the maintainer of universities, and the government appointed trustees to these boards of public interest trusts.
So could you say that you said no to mole and that's why you got fired?
Sorry, what was the word?
Could one say that you said no to mole in a way, and got fired for that?
I said no to a student, and the student was coming from a family that was influential through their business interests, and the university management itself became concerned with their influence through mole, which I think tells a great deal about the vulnerability of universities towards business and political interests in such a scheme, such a governance scheme.
Okay, luckily you found another work now, but you said you used the word systematic. Sorry, I'm going to switch to you in a second, but you used the word systematic. Why is that systematic?
It's systematic because, you know, out of 20-something Hungarian universities, 25 Hungarian public universities, 21 is placed under the control of this public interest trust, which means that influential people like the CEO and chairman of MOL himself becoming the leaders of these boards which are controlling universities. So the universities' management becomes a matter of decision by political and business leaders, which goes against academic freedom as a principle.
Zsófia?
Well, actually, Corvinus, your university, was the first one to have been taken out of the system of public universities, and which is usually referred to as a model change, a change in the model, and it was privatized. And therefore, as Zoltán said, the people sitting on boards are often placed by people who are close to Fidesz in some way,
That's
or
what
the
I was going
government.
to ask, exactly.
Yeah,
Explain us, I mean, the university system, which we're starting our little journey now with, is symbolic in a way for the changes in Hungary, because it's been filled with oligarchs and trustees and friends of Orbán's. What else changed?
Well, not all of the universities have been privatized. ELTE is still a public university, the University of Fine Arts, and the Liszt Academy of Music, and I think that's about it, as far as I know. And all the others have been privatized and who have these boards. And also previously so-called chancellors, who are supposed to oversee the financial matters, but as a matter of fact, they also interfere in HR matters, so they absolutely gained control of, and these are government appointees.
Yeah. Zoltán said to me when we talked on the phone a week ago, academic governance is transformed to serve the interests of those in power. Would you agree?
The academic what? Sorry.
The academic governance is transformed to serve those in power.
Yes, yes. And the problem is that even at universities that have not been privatized, the...
Irgendjemand hat sein Handy an. Sorry. Danke.
The board of rectors are also afraid to go against the government because they fear that they will be cut in their fundings and so on, and that they themselves would lose power. So at ELTE, for example, Eötvös Loránd University, that's ELTE in short, we were always waiting for the rectors and deans to oppose certain change, but they never did.
Okay, but you said that education was never a priority of Orbán during the last years. Why not? And what is an indication of that?
Well, education is a priority, but in a negative sense. That they have been working on dismantling public education in Hungary, I'm sorry to say in a very successful way, because it's in their interest not to educate people. So as long as, the more ignorant people are about the ways of the world and the less information they get and the less knowledge they acquire, the easier it is to dominate them and rule over them.
So what is not taught anymore? You say foreign languages are reduced, social sciences are reduced, philosophy is reduced.
Absolutely.
And what do they do
there
instead?
was the single program that they in fact banned at all Hungarian universities was the gender studies programs, which is one of the big no-nos from Orbán's perspective, and he uses the gender ideology and gendering as a kind of swear word, whereas obviously they have no inkling of what exactly it's about, but they, just see it as a part of this woke philosophy that they are opposed to and that they wish to do away with.
One more question about universities. You are considered in Hungary as a victim of academic freedom. Would you agree, and did anybody stand up for you?
You mean a victim of the lack of academic freedom?
Yep.
In some sense, I'm obviously a victim of the lack of academic freedom, but I think there are much more important victims of the lack of academic freedom. I mean, universities themselves, and it's not exactly like university education as such is eliminated. It's ideologically driven, controlled in a weird way politically and economically as well, and placing it under the influence of certain government-associated business and political elites. But this is actually very similar to what you can see in the public education systems in the United States, for instance, or in many other countries of the world. This kind of populist or right-wing populist governments do make efforts of controlling higher education, because that's one of the major institutional powers from which criticism stems against those governments. So when they are trying to take over societies, obviously they are trying to take over the elite reproduction process, and one way to do that is controlling universities.
So the ultimate goal, is to weaken to weaken democracies, to weaken democratic thinking?
Well, they would, if they were sitting here at this podium, they would be claiming that they are making public university education more democratic because they are placing it under the control of elected politicians. Of course, this is not the way I'm thinking about public higher education. I guess Zsófia doesn't think this way either. But democracy is a strange thing, and in some sense it's a super dangerous thing. So if democracy is something which makes popular or public control borderless without institutional constraints, then it's getting to be very close to some sort of tyranny. And this is what they make in higher education, basically.
One thing is, it's pretty symbolic that we no longer have a Ministry of Education and we no longer have a Ministry of Culture. Can you imagine that? Within Europe, within the European Union, there is a country at the center of everything which does not have either of these ministries, which is, there's not a lot to add to this state of affairs, and it's highly symbolic because, and it's not primarily in terms of ideology that they have been trying to control higher education at public universities, but with an outrageous with outrageous cuts in funding. People in higher education are the least well-paid educators, even within Hungary, because they have managed after a long time to raise the salaries of people in lower education, but not in higher education. So, and also they have been cutting the budgets of different programs. And I mean, ELTE is supposed to be the best university in the country, which it still is in terms of its prestige. But as far as the money behind it, it's the worst.
Yeah. That's brought on the picture. Sorry, yeah.
So let me just add. So these are deals. So everything is up to deals. So once Corvinus, my former university, was placed under this public interest trust, actually wages were raised. I mean, the wages at Corvinus are not actually not that bad.
Argument when they introduced it.
Actually, those are not that bad.
Yeah, but
So when ELTE says that, no, thanks, we don't want this, then the deal is that, okay, you can stay like that if you insist, but then you will be starving, basically, at the end of the day.
well, and that's called blackmail.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
guess.
called blackmail.
And also, yes, they raised not as much as they promised. They raised the salaries, yes, but on the other hand, they also did away with tenure. So people at any time can be sacked.
Yeah.
So if, yeah, you can have a little more money, but we can kick you out any time.
I would like to make a little cut here, so we walk away from universities and broaden the picture a bit and look at arts and culture in general. Everybody wonders, is there censorship, or naked censorship, or is it done by less funding, you know, political pressure, whatever?
As far as I see it, it's the latter. They sort of let journals bleed out. A lot of after the political transition from 90 on, there were huge numbers of new journals, and most of them have ceased to exist. The same is true for the theater, especially for alternative theater groups. Many of them had to close down, and basically the same is true for all the arts.
Yeah. Is it true for media as well? Is there no censorship in media, or is there self-censorship at least in state media and Fidesz media?
I don't think there's media in the sense that you publish something and you get into jail or I mean you're not going to be getting finance from the state. I mean the public finance and finance which is controlled by the government through their associated business entities is highly politically sensitive, obviously. But you can print basically whatever you want. You will just find yourself on the fringe of your industry.
But if you worked for one of the state TV stations, you couldn't say what you want.
You wouldn't be able.
But we are not working there anymore. I mean, you have not been working
there
for. You haven't been.
They wouldn't hire you. But what I want to know, the ones who work there, what kind of you know those? I mean, I talk to them, but you talk to them too. What kind of conditions are they? Do they get a call every morning from someone saying you write this today and you better not write that today?
Well,
so I don't think there's a general rule like that. I guess different institutions are governed different ways. But obviously, these are politically controlled institutions. So what you call public media is not public in the sense of, these are not driven by professional rules or standards. These institutions, the media institutions, organizations are driven by political appointees who control editorially the organization.
As far as I know, from people who work either in television or radio, they have in fact received lists of names whom they should not call in for interviews. specific names.
Like, for example, 4 years ago, the candidate of the unified opposition, Péter Magyar, was on state television for exactly 8 minutes. 8 minutes during the whole electoral campaign, 8 minutes.
Exactly.
Has Péter Magyar ever been quoted on official TV?
Not as far as I know. His first interview was given at Partizan.
I know, which is a partisan media.
Which is, obviously.
I personally don't know, but to be honest, I don't really think that at this point it's very important. So everybody knows that these are partisan organizations. So if you are critical of the government, you are simply not watching public television.
So everybody knows the rules and goes by it.
Everybody knows the credit or the merit and the creditworthiness of these organizations. You just simply don't give credit to them if you have a critical view of the government.
I would not quite agree with that, because there are a lot of people who watch state television and listen to state radio who do believe them, who take what is spoken there for granted.
I would actually doubt what question what you said too, because if I'm an old lady and I live close to Debrecen somewhere, and I don't have internet, or I'm not used to working with internet, and I would want to find out something about Péter Magyar, how would I?
So I'm not saying that it's a good thing that public media as such is politically controlled, or the overwhelming majority of the printed press actually is politically controlled as well. Yeah. So where you find the free media as such is the internet, and it's extremely powerful actually. So the internet-based free media is a super powerful media in Hungary, and it does a beautiful, great job. But sorry. So I think there are at least one or two factors you want to consider. So first of all, there are very, very few people who do not have access to internet. So there's this myth of the Fidesz voter whose only source of news is the public media, or some of the government-controlled media. So the overwhelming majority of people do have access to internet-based media, and actually they do watch such sources. Actually, they may obviously an increasing part of society, not only in Hungary but in the world, gets their news feed through social media. Okay, so even old ladies have social media feeds.
Okay, Zsófia, do you want to say something?
But what they get on their social media is not the kind of information that would go against what they hear on state.
We don't have to discuss algorithms now.
Everybody stays within their own bubble.
Of course, but
they don't look for opposition information.
Okay. So, Zoltán, so books, universities, media, almost everything is centralized or close to the state. Everything works under the banner of national culture. Almost everything is under the control of the party. When we do not talk about opposition media. Laws like those against foreign agent or so-called transparency law try to threaten critics. So would you say, as someone who researches about that Hungary is an autocracy, or would you not go that far?
Oh, there is a very fine analysis. I mean, there are analytical terminologies for that. So Hungary is an electoral autocracy. It's not a closed autocracy, but it's an electoral autocracy, which means that it's a popularly elected government that conducts autocratic governance in the country. Okay, so it means that the government, who has autocratic powers, because there is a lack of effective checks and balances in the country, as a result of the operations of Fidesz in the past 16 years, and obviously to some extent of the heritage Hungary carries since, I don't know, hundreds of years. There is autocratic rule, but it's democratically elected and democratically legitimized, which is super important. It's actually pretty similar to the case of Donald Trump in the US. Is he autocratic? He is. Was he elected? He was.
Okay.
Well, I see a pretty big difference, because in the US, the system of checks and balances is still, even if not as healthy as earlier, but it's still there, whereas in Hungary it's not.
Yeah, but Trump hasn't been ruling for 16 years.
Yes, and therefore he introduced an electoral system that is not free and fair. It has been contaminated with their specific goals, and they changed the election system in a way as to make it almost impossible to win an election against them.
So are we talking about Orbán now?
I am.
She's talking.
So that actually the literature doesn't agree with you, Zsófia.
Well, depends on which literature you read.
The literature, what is called political science or political economy literature. So I deeply respect your views on that. But
You must know that they're neighbors and they've known each other for 20 years. I heard that today. So
Yeah.
they do that all the time.
yeah, of course. So the literature says that elections are free but unfair, which means that essentially no one checks how you are casting your vote in the booth when you enter there.
Except when they do.
Exactly.
Except when they...
Sorry, you can go on a second, but sorry. I just heard, I talked to someone today who said he's been watching people last time, during the last election in 22, who took pictures of their ballot, because that's not forbidden in Hungary, and had to show them to their boss, because if they didn't want to risk to be fired, they had to vote for Orbán.
But it was forbidden.
No?
It was forbidden, and they did that illegally. But now there's a new law introduced which makes it legal.
Okay.
So you can take
Zoltán,
a
you want to say
photograph.
So very honestly,
ballot.
I'm not exactly sure what you are talking about, guys.
We're talking about electoral fraud.
If you have evidence for that, then I'm very happy to read about it. I think the overwhelming evidence says that elections are free and secret. Actually, I myself was an observer of elections because I was interested in that, and also I thought that it was part of my duty. So I went to a very small village in the southern west Hungary, which Fidesz won with about 90% of the votes, and there was no single infringement upon the rules of the elections. I think this is a legend. People. Give me the reference. I think, and you can go to the reports of this. What is this European OSCE report? So the OSCE says that elections are free but unfair. So electoral inference actually doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen because they do not need it, because they do the work before the elections. They do it through their media empire and through their, this clientele building. So they distribute resources, government-controlled resources through budgetary means based on political preferences. You know that your village will not receive that much money if it turns out to be an opposition village. But no one goes into the booth. That's a legend.
No,
Zsófia, you can answer, and then we'll
I
make
didn't
another
say
step.
they go into the booth, but they were required to photograph their ballot in order to prove that they had not voted against them. And if they did, they would no longer get those közmunkák, the public works. People who don't have jobs are given menial jobs to do. Let me finish. In exchange for their vote. And the literature, another kind of literature, also says, take for example, under Kádár, elections were free. Under Kádár, elections were free. No. Yes, but excuse me, they were free. The only problem was you didn't have any alternatives.
Could you?
We have the same problem now. And the literature says if elections are unfair, not fair, then they are also not free. So
one last answer, and then we'll go on.
again, I deeply respect your views on that,
I do too.
but they happen to be pretty far from any professional standard.
Well, I just...
Okay, can we
Wow.
okay, I think you're not going to talk to each other tomorrow over the garden fence, but can we move on, please?
I mean, it's fine.
If we just stick to that disagreement and live with it, would you agree that this time things are different? Because we have an electoral autocracy in a way, because the system is structured in a way that Orban's not supposed to lose, because we have gerrymandering, because we have a system that enhances the victory of the winner and reduces the seats of the loser. We have the media, we have everything else. So if we assume all that, and this time Péter Magyar from TISA party is 12% in the lead, even more so with people who are already decided. So whoever you talk to says, if it stays that way, Magyar cannot lose. How can Orbán make him lose?
I don't think Orbán can make him lose.
Okay.
I don't believe. So, and that's the point. I mean, it's simply not true that Fidesz cannot be beaten through this electoral system. It can be. Actually, it could have been back in 2022. They were very lucky. One of the major factors interfered was the Russian assault on Ukraine. So back then in 2022, they could launch a propaganda campaign in which they are sort of depicted Hungary as a vulnerable country and Fidesz being the only government that can save Hungary from getting into the war. And that was a major part of the propaganda campaign. They also distributed lots of money. So you could get back your personal income tax payments from the previous year, and it did work because economically they could afford. They cannot afford it anymore, and this war stress doesn't really work either. And they are basically have lost all their major foreign supporters within Europe. They still have Putin and they still have Trump. But they are not particularly popular either. And at the top of that, Trump just launched a war against Iran, which makes it very, very difficult for Orbán to claim anymore that we are for peace when Trump is the major ally who has just initiated a major war effort against Iran. So I actually don't think, neither technically, in a technical sense, they can win the election anymore, in my view, and nor ideologically they cannot dominate Hungary anymore.
Unless they change rules at the last minute, for instance, they can do whatever they want since they have 2/3 majority, which is why they have been going on with the very heavy gerrymandering of electoral, what's it called? The districts, and bringing in people from across the border to vote, and registering like 50 people in one apartment so they can vote in Hungary, making it very difficult for citizens working abroad to vote in every way possible. So, for instance, someone said that they were trying to register online, and it was basically impossible to get through the system simply to register, and so on and so forth. So we don't know what they might be up to in the next 1 month or so.
Do you disagree?
So just to make it a little bit more maybe understandable. So back in 2022, Fidesz received 53% of the popular vote, 53%. So in any democratic country of the world, they would have won. The Hungarian specificity was that with 53% of the popular vote, they could reproduce their 2/3 majority in parliament. And that's a problem because with the 2/3, they can conduct any constitutional change overnight. In the Hungarian system, if you've got the 2/3 majority in parliament, you can do anything. And in that sense, Zsófia is technically right that they could eliminate elections as such tomorrow if they decided so. They will not decide so because they do depend on popular support. I mean, the political system, electoral autocracy, doesn't really allow for that. Now they are not standing at 53% of popularity. Now they are between 30 and 40 somewhere, and they have a competitor who is way ahead of them, and that just makes their job impossible.
Before we talk about the competitor, because everybody here is probably interested in who is Péter Magyar,
Yeah.
why is Orbán losing out so massively this time? I mean, last time he was not in a good position. Everybody thought, well, we can maybe win. Then in the end, they didn't. So what's worse this time? What's different this time, Zsófia?
Well, I think one of the important factors is that he is someone who came from their ranks, from among their ranks, that he used to be a Fidesznik. His ex-wife was the Minister of Justice, who had to resign as a result of the pedophile scandal that broke out 2 years ago.
Yeah. January of 24.
Along with the president, who was also a woman. So they sacrificed two of their leading women who were made to resign. Nobody else resigned, only the two of them.
But Zsófia, I didn't ask. Can you answer first? What has become worse for Orbán? I mean, Magyar is another question. We'll talk about that later. But let's discuss the situation. It's economics, it's health, it's education, it's corruption.
Yeah, but these problems were there before as well. During these past 16 years, health, education, and so on and so on, they were in dire straits all along.
So the difference is that someone is pinpointing it this time?
Yes, yes, and someone is using in a very clever manner alternative media, which is, for example, that he gave that first big interview on Partisan, which is what would you call it?
It's a YouTube channel.
Yeah, basically a YouTube channel, which is a very influential platform that a huge amount of people watch, and that's where he came out.
But Zoltán, do you agree that, I mean, we keep reading everywhere that the economic situation has worsened and Orbán just is losing out because he's ruling badly?
So first of all, the YouTube channels were there back in 2022 as well. So Magyar didn't invent anything new. He's using social media.
That's what I said.
He's using social media very efficiently. And the difference between the situation today and like 4 years ago, I think there are about two major differences, or maybe three, I'm not sure. So one is certainly the different economic situation today. Economically, the regime has weakened a lot. So in the 2010s, Hungary was in a the world was in a good economic shape, and Hungary was in a good shape as well, receiving huge funds from the European Union and enjoying an upturn in the global economic cycle. So employment grew, real wages grew, GDP grew as well. Now GDP hasn't grown for about 3 years, and real wages actually declined during the high inflation period a few years ago. And this is a different story now than it was a few years ago, not to mention like 5 or 10 years ago economically. There is also a completely different position of the government within Europe and within the world than it was like 5 or 10 years ago. So back then, Orbán was supported by his conservative friends across Europe. He was part of EPP. I mean, he did have support from German Christian Democrats and many other European conservatives, Nicolas Sarkozy and many others Sebastian Kurz visiting Budapest in a regular manner and expressing their support towards Orbán. Now those who are supporting Orbán are on the far right. I mean, the Patriots for Europe with Giorgia Meloni and Alice Weidel, who's not Patriots for Europe, but she's also on the far right, of course, FPÖ, and Donald Trump. So these are not particularly popular figures in Hungary. I mean, the majority of the population doesn't necessarily want to have a government which is supported by these people.
I think that investigative journalism has strengthened a lot in Hungary, and they have managed to reveal a lot of the huge stealing that has been happening in the country, and not just stealing, but I mean the latest is the Samsung factory, which basically has been poisoning their own workers, and they knew about it, and that has been proved that they knew about it. And all of these scandals are coming one after another to the foreground, and people are learning about these things. And I think that's also a factor that they no longer can, because they rule the media, they can no longer, as opposed to ruling the media, they can no longer hush up these.
What I find interesting is, we've been talking about the media control in Hungary, but many corruption scandals have been published by alternative channels. Okas Hadhazi, one of the, an independent candidate of parliament, who was here in Vienna with me 3 weeks ago. I mean, he's been like publishing 300 corruption scandals, and everybody knows about them. So maybe Orbán is right when he says that there is free press in Hungary still. You were starting to talk about Péter Magyar. He is using this very cleverly. I know this is, I mean, they don't agree on anything. They will not agree on that, luckily, because we have two slightly different positions on Péter Magyar here on this podium, too. You think he's a good thing, a good person, and you, well, maybe not. I'll let you talk. Why do you think he is good for the fate of Hungary? Let me put it that way.
Let's just put that out there. If I had an alternative, he would not be my first choice. I mean, he's a professed center-right-wing person, which I'm not. But on the other hand, well, first of all, there's no other possible alternative. And so I think that if we want the opposition to win, we have to vote, give both of our votes for TISA, otherwise they would lose a lot of mandates. And this is the big discussion that I've been having with friends and with many other people on social media, because quite a few people are saying, and I think you are one of them, I think, that you would not vote for such a person. And I think that this is because, and the usual quotation is that he does not represent my values, which is very nice, but this is not the moment where you get to choose a person who represents your values.
But do you think he's a conservative, an extremely, he's as conservative as Orbán?
Yes,
yeah?
No, not as conservative. No, I think Orbán, well, Fidesz has not been simply right-wing for a long time. I think he's much, much further to the right by now. And I think basically this third party who is supposed to get into parliament called Our Homeland is doing the dirty work for them, even though they profess to be independent of Fidesz, which they are not. So I think that, that Fidesz and the government is a far-right government. And Magyar is, as far as I can tell, and based on what his priorities are, to stay within the European Union, to join the European Public Prosecutor's Office, and he's saying all the right things as far as that kind of politics is concerned. But I agree, he has made certain strategic choices. For instance, he didn't say anything when the huge Pride march happened
No, he actually
last
did. I saw an
year.
interview where he said, I'm always for free assembly and this Pride has to take place.
Yes, he put the emphasis on free
didn't
assembly,
talk about
but he
LGBTQ.
didn't talk about supporting gay rights and so on and so forth, but free assembly. Okay, fine. So, yeah, he has been very cautious and very strategic in order to maximize his following, which he has done in a very successful manner.
Zoltán, 2 questions. You said when we talked before that if you are afraid that if he gets the chance to become an autocrat, he's a populist now, you say, if he gets the chance to become an autocrat, if he gets elected, he might use it. One question. The second question is, he is voting in Brussels, where he has had 30% he got last year in the European elections, against some European core issues. Why?
Wow. No, I have to reflect upon a number of questions. From how I vote to what
You don't have to tell us. We live with the secret.
To what Péter Magyar does in Brussels. So I was trying to make a point that this is a different political landscape today in Hungary than it was a few years ago. And an important part of the difference is that, first of all, Orbán's regime has been becoming a sort of a tired, weared out regime in many ways. You can see the corruption scandals, you can see the relatively low level of governance, the quality of governance deteriorating in many respects. And this is sort of a fate of authoritarian governments, because democracy is a problematic system of governance, but one of the advantages of you actually have critical feedback. In an autocratic regime, you do not have the critical feedback. All the autocrats of the world run that risk, from Trump through Putin to Orbán. And after 16 years in power, of course, you face your own mistakes. In good, which is an environmental catastrophe, to this child care abuse stories in the state's child care system, this scandal with the president of the republic giving a pardon to a helper of a pedophile criminal belongs to that part of the mistakes the regime has done repeatedly in past years. And it's also true, and it's also important that Péter Magyar himself, who is a populist, who doesn't run a democratic political party, he runs a populist, his party literally has something like 29 members. I cannot become a member of his party. There are no democratic votes in his party. There might be, I don't know, the 29 people makes decisions maybe in a democratic way, but it's not like an ordinary Hungarian can become a member of the party. There is no democratic accountability within his movement. It's a movement led by a single person, and those who are supporting him can be part of the so-called Tisza Islands and can make caritative work and to some extent can make their voice about who their local candidate would be, and then the party leadership either accepts or not their decision. So it's not a democratic party, it's a populist movement, but it's very efficient, that's true. It seems that in a political system which has been worked upon by this electoral autocratic system and a deeply populist political leader like Viktor Orbán, this also populist counter-movement, an opposition movement to the regime, to the elites of the regime, by another populist guy who, for personal reasons, went the other way and became a critic of the regime instead of being part of the nomenclature that he had been up until the beginning of 2024. It seems to be more efficient as an opposition than any democratic party. One of the major reasons for that is that democratic parties are always criticizing each other because they are democratic. And even their membership might be criticizing their leadership, which is very complicated. You know, it's a cumbersome process to be a Democrat. He's not a Democrat, he's leading a populist movement. It's a much easier story. And that's why they behave in Brussels the way they do behave, because what they do is they do not really follow any principles or any ideology. They try to feel and try to measure, actually, I mean, through opinion polls, what the electorate expects them to do. And that's why they vote down, for instance, the EU loan to Ukraine, the 90 billion EU loan to Ukraine. They were voting it down. They were the only member party of the EPP, of the European People's Party, who voted it down. They did vote down because they sensed that the Hungarian electorate, the majority or the sizable part of the Hungarian electorate, expect them to do so.
Zsófia, if Magyar wins, which we heard is very possible, will Hungary be in a Poland position? Like, will Orbán be always in the background, all the structures being pro-Fidesz, the Fidesz people sitting still in the central positions? Will he falter because he has no chance of reforming?
I don't think if you look at his political history, he was always best when he was in opposition.
Orbán.
Orbán.
Yeah, well, he is his own opposition sometimes.
He is his own opposition, yeah, and he loves to fight. I mean, he's a military-minded person. And so will he be hovering in the background? Yes, very much so. I mean, he has set up a whole network of systems that will still be there, even if Magyar wins, and it will be a very, very difficult job to dismantle this system, if that's possible at all.
Yeah. Zoltán, before we widen our view just one step more, you say it's probable that Magyar wins. I hear from everybody that I talk to, Orbán is not someone who can lose. It's just not in his character. So if you think he's not going to influence the elections before they take place in an illegal way, will he accept the outcome?
I think he will. I mean, he has accepted the outcome back in 2002, and he did accept the outcome in 2006. When he lost the election. So he did lose numerous elections, actually.
But that was a very long time
yes,
ago.
that's a long time ago.
It was actually not that long time ago, but I mean, what is long and what is short? But I think the more important and more interesting question is, how could he not accept? And I think this is what I would like to emphasize, that of course, you can always contemplate about going from these hybrid regimes, these electoral autocracies, to something which is in the literature called closed autocracy. So it's like a Turkish or a Russian move from a partly democratically legitimized regime to a pure autocracy. You can always do that, theoretically, if you have the power for that. And he does have the constitutional power for that. He doesn't have the actual power, he doesn't have the popular support for that. And doing it against the popular support, that's something very, very dangerous and very, very difficult. And in Hungary, in the past 40 years, it didn't happen. I mean, no one can exclude that he would try it, but I don't see the Hungarian society to be prepared for that. And I think actually the pride moment is very indicative of that. So what he did, he did ban Pride, the Pride March last year. In 2025, Pride was illegal in Hungary. So whoever attended Pride last year did have the risk of committing something illegal and facing consequences. So many of my friends with whom I attended Pride brought their biking helmets because they didn't know what would happen.
Well, they did say that they would have to pay a fine of 200,000 forints.
Exactly. Exactly. And what happened? Nothing happened. So the police was out there. The entire pride was illegal, and the police didn't interfere, and no one had to pay a single for it. And that showed the power of the public for me. So I don't think Orbán is in the position of banning elections or rejecting the result of those elections.
Sorry?
He has been strengthening his war campaign. They put on video platforms an ad in which a little girl is looking for her dad, and what you can see is 4 men kneeling, blindfolded, and they are being executed by a soldier. And
campaign.
yes, absolutely. And little children are seeing this ad, by the way, who are watching.
What does it imply? I mean, I've seen it, so, but what do you...
Kids television, while they are watching a cartoon, this comes in. Why? Because I think he is thinking about delaying the elections.
I interpreted that story in the way that he's implying that Hungarian soldiers are going to be killed in Ukraine soon.
Yes.
Yes, that's the implication of the video.
Yes, that's the implication.
And he's
but
showing
but
like,
we have been living under a so-called state of emergency for I don't know how many years
6.
now. We at present are in a state of emergency, and we have been in a state of emergency, and I think he would want to prolong that. And because of that, to delay elections.
So that's a theoretical option. He can try to do that. I don't think it would be a fruitful way of developments for him. And it's also, just to use some empirics. So last year, they actually did introduce a proposal for Parliament to effectively banning independent media and civil society organizations financed from external parties, including the European Union, and placing them under very harsh controls. And they, revoked the proposal, which was also telling a lot about they're becoming hesitant, they're facing their internal disruptions. So I simply don't think that they are adamant enough, determined enough to go that way down.
The exciting thing is we'll know on the 12th of April, and none of us knows now.
We have been living in this state of emergency, Zsófia described, since 2015, because of the migration crisis. So first, because of the migration crisis between 2015 and 2019, 2021, 2022.
So
2022, and since 2022, because of the war in Ukraine.
No, it was a migration crisis status in 2015, which was not a full emergency crisis status. Then he introduced the one with COVID in 2020, prolonged it in 2022, and they prolonged it again last fall. I just read that today, in order to have it last, which is, I think, telling, until the 13th of May this year. So exactly 1 month after the elections. That's the current state of laws.
By the way, I'm glad you mentioned COVID, because Hungary was the country that worst mishandled the COVID situation, and more people died in Hungary than in any other country within the European Union. And I mean, you cannot not notice that, even if you don't deal in politics or if you don't necessarily read political news, but people were seeing family members, friends, and relatives dying as a result of Orbán's handling of the COVID situation, and I think that was also a very important factor.
You breathe hardly.
You don't agree.
That's of course much more complicated than the Zsófia. So it's not true that more people died in Hungary than any other country. So of course you want to talk about proportions.
Yes.
So these are proportionalities first of all.
Obviously.
And
Can we not
secondly,
talk about COVID now, please?
We're not.
No. I'm just correct because you said more people. This is simply not true.
Proportion.
Yeah.
I'm the moderator. I want to talk about COVID now. Can we?
No. But I'm not really talking about COVID. So I think the interesting part, but that's true that you could criticize. I did criticize. I mean, I did write analysis of Hungarian health policies during COVID, and those policies were not particularly good. You could criticize them. The interesting part of the story is why those criticisms didn't work. Those criticism was out there, politically out there, and professionally out there. It didn't work. It does work now, and this is the major difference.
Main news,
I mean, he cannot stage a coup for the same reason the criticism works now, because there's a completely different political landscape in which he became sort of a political loser instead of a political winner, became dismissed by the majority of Hungarian society.
That's very interesting because it's the contradiction of a picture that we keep reading and keep hearing, or have been reading for a while, and which is the picture that he himself paints of himself as a constant winner. But before I want to talk a few more minutes about foreign policy and then hand over to you if you have questions. I want to ask a general question, like trying to sum up this last hour. Would you say that since 2010, when he came in power like the second time and has been in power for 16 years, he has managed to change like the texture, the identity, the self-understanding of Hungarian society, or has he not?
I start and then you can criticize me. So I think he was super skilled. I mean, we are talking about Orbán now. So he has always been super skillful in building upon, in picking the social traditions and you know, the social attitudes that were useful for him. So you can go back in history to at least to the interwar period, but even to the 19th century. And you can trace the sort of feudal or rank-based attitudes in Hungary, which sort of make the society, you know, ranked or stratified in a way that makes you believe that you are subordinated to your superiors and you cannot change that status. It's sort of given. And you always have to behave in a way that in a top-down mechanism determined politically. It's deeply entrenched in Hungarian tradition. And he very, very skillfully strengthened that tradition in the past 16 years. I think he did a very effective, efficient job in that respect.
Mm-hmm. I think what he and his party and government did right from the beginning was to sort of appropriate certain national symbols, like the kokarda, this pin that we wear on March 15th, which is a celebration of the 1848 revolution in Hungary, and many others. I won't go into that because it's a long list. And they appropriated these symbols for their own purposes. What Magyar immediately did, right from the beginning, was to take these back. And not just symbols, but also language, the specific words that Fidesz also appropriated, and terms, expressions that they appropriated for their own purposes. And he has basically taken these back and using them again in opposition. And that's also a very strong message, because people who don't necessarily feel themselves aligned to Orbán's politics are happy to sort of have their own traditions and mythologies given back to them. And that is, that has very strong symbolism and is very effective.
Yeah. What I've been watching during the last years is, on the one hand, Orbán painting Hungary as a victim of Trianon, of a victim of Brussels.
Always a victim.
Always a victim. And on the other hand, he's painting Hungary as a winner, because it has its coalitions with Mr. Trump, it has its coalition with Mr. Putin, and it's on the side of the rising powers in the world. So do those images both work?
Well, I mean, it's an illusion that they have a coalition, because they are using them. Both of them, Trump as well as Putin.
So Orbán is being used.
Is being used. There is no such thing as a coalition between Hungary or Orbán and these two. They're simply, he's simply the, as they say, the useful idiot in the game. And nobody knows, for instance, with what is Putin holding him? Because there was a moment when, well, I can't remember the exact year when this happened, when he was ordered for a visit to Putin.
2007.
And 2007. And until that point, he was hugely anti-Russian. As soon as he arrived at the airport, he was pro-Russian.
Zoltán will say this is a myth now, but you want to answer?
Well, the literature proves it.
I'm not sure. I mean, you're a writer, and I love your literature. It might be a little bit different from my literature.
You didn't see that happening from one day to the next?
I don't remember that, but I'm not gonna be discussing it. So what is true? What I'm prepared, because I simply cannot recall it, and but I'm very happy to go into the records. What I do know is that Orbán did a good job in transforming Hungarian attitude. So that's true that Hungary, particularly right-wing Hungary, has traditionally been very critical of Russia and Soviet influence and Russian influence over Hungary. And there's good reason for that. I mean, Russia has always been an imperialistic state which oppressed Hungarian ambitions for freedom. So back in 1848, the freedom fight against the Habsburgs was oppressed by the Russians, I mean, with the help of the Russians. And obviously in 1956, the Russians oppressed the revolution, and Hungary was an occupied country by the Soviet army from 1945 until 1991. And that generates a tradition altogether, particularly on the right-hand side of the political spectrum. And Orbán did systematically transform that tradition towards a much more benevolent, much more sympathetic public attitude towards Russia, and also towards China and many Eastern autocratic countries. I think that generated a perception in Hungary that although we are having a difficult, just to answer your question, Cathrin, so although we are having a difficult position, we are defending the West, as we have always been doing so, against the Turks, against the Mongols, whoever came by. And the West was not particularly grateful for us. Look at Trianon. They took away 2/3 of our country, which, by the way, has some truth in it, I have to say. So we have this asymmetric relation to the West. But now we are grasping the moment. We are now seizing the opportunity of generating strategic relations towards these rising Western powers. This was Orbán's argument. And I think it did work basically up until now. So even, and in that sense, it's very, very important, I think, what Trump does in the world now. Because when he escalates, he ruins Orbán's argument that we are on the side of the peace when we are siding with Trump. And now I'm not criticizing Trump's war in Iran. I don't want to go there. I mean, I could criticize it, but I don't want to go there. I just want to say that Orbán's position in terms of perceptions, and the perceptions are the important. It's not particularly important in that respect to what extent Orbán is used. Of course, Orbán is used by all these autocrats, obviously. But the question is whether he can sell these perceptions to the Hungarian public. And he did sell it to the Hungarian public up until now. I think he cannot anymore.
Yeah. One last question, then I'm done. Will Hungary, after these elections, stay a European power or become again a European power?
Power.
Well, a power within Europe, so a pro-European force. That's probably better.
Yeah.
I mean, depends on who wins the elections.
Let's just, okay.
I think that if Magyar wins the elections, then obviously yes. And unfortunately, if not, I think that at this point, you know, has been talk about taking away the vote and doing this, doing that. They never did really anything. They can't, and they don't really want to. But I think if he continues along this line, then we will get there eventually. Mm-hmm.
So I think Hungary will stay in the European Union, and if Orbán loses and Magyar hopefully wins, I do hope that Magyar wins, then Hungary will be an easier partner for the European Union than it is now. However, it's not going to be one of the easiest partners. For the same reason, Magyar votes down the proposal to finance Ukraine, because he is a democratically elected politician and he does have to sell his policies in Hungary. And Hungary, as a country, as a constituency, will not change overnight. I believe Hungary will vote down Orbán and will elect Magyar, but it will still stay the same country, you know, processed and manipulated through at least 16 years by Orbán.
Thank you. So, I invite you to ask questions